Good evening, everyone. We will call the City Commission of Deltona's workshop for Monday, July 25th, 2022 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bradford?
Here.
Commissioner King? Here. Commissioner McCool?
Here.
Commissioner Ramos?
Present.
Commissioner Sosa?
Here.
Vice Mayor Vila Vasquez?
Present.
Mayor Hersberg?
Here. May we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner King, would you like to lead us?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this evening we have one item on our workshop agenda, and this is to review the proposed annual budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. Mr. Peters.
Thank you, ma'am. Before I get started, the PowerPoint presentation that you all have before you, on the next to last page, I had an error on the third line. The number should be 7.4955. So I just want to put that out there right now. Madam Mayor, if I can beg y'all's indulgence to allow me to go through the entire PowerPoint presentation uninterrupted so that I can stay on task. And then at the end, we would have a question and broad discussion at that point. But I think it's important for all of this to be brought out together because it is a package, even though it's three separate items. Basically, the agenda is the amount of the, oops, I'm sorry, wrong one. The workshop agenda is the pension deficit payment review. This is something that I have promised you all during the line item review of the budget. So we have done some analysis as to what we think is the appropriate level of paying down the pension deficit. The second item is something that came to light last Wednesday. And let me just remind you, Wednesday was after we had the discussion about trim notice and what have you. And as I go through this part of the presentation, you will understand why I felt it was important to bring this to you this quickly. And then the last part is a review of the trim notice, millage rate, and discussion of such. Pension deficit payment review. There are four factors that affect how we would come up with a recommendation for the pension deficit payment. The first one is the amount of the deficit. The second is the percentage of coverage. The third is the deficit coverage time. And then the fourth is the rate of return. In this particular spreadsheet, I have highlighted in red the section entitled Existing Pension Shortfall. Let me remind you that we have two sets of numbers right now, and soon we will have three. The pension board is showing an $8.1 million pension deficit. Their actuarial is using in that analysis, using a 30-year time frame, a 7.65% rate of return. And so using those numbers, it's 8.1 million deficit. We hired our own actuarial to review it. They did the actuarial, oops. They did the actuarial based on 15 years and 6.5% rate of return, and that came out to a $14 million deficit. Subsequently, Foster & Foster, the actuarial for the pension board, had come back with recommendations that instead of 30-year period, that they look at a 20-year period, and instead of 7.6% rate of return, they look at a 7.2% rate of return. We do not know what that deficit number will be because they will be running those numbers this fall and updating the pension board. Just a quick look. I believe that number is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $10.5 to $11 million using that number. So we know that the pension deficit is somewhere between 8.1 and 14, and more likely between 10.5 and $14 million, which is a lot of money. The next item is percentage coverage.
John, I'm sorry, I know you said you didn't want to be interrupted, but can you go back to the slide and can you actually explain what you just did in ABC so that people understand what you're talking about? Can you explain that again in more?
On that one?
No, the first one. Was it the first one or the second one? This one here? Can you be more, give a little bit more detail exactly what you're saying?
Okay.
Thank you.
The pension board actuarial, that is Foster & Foster, had done an analysis of what the pension deficit is. Their analysis is based on a 30-year time frame. One of the problems with the 30-year time frame is most of the people in the fire department retire at around 20 years. So, you know, you're projecting it out more years than the actual likelihood that people are going to be working. The second thing is it is based on a 7.65% rate of return, which my understanding over the last 10 years has only happened once or twice at most. It just hadn't happened. So it's a very high rate of return. But the same actuarial for the pension board recently came back with a recommendation that going forward, that they look at a 20-year period to evaluate, and that they use a rate of return of 7.2%. Now, as I said, that will result in a higher pension shortfall than the 8.1 million that they currently show. The city brought in an actuarial to evaluate it from our perspective, because ultimately the city commission, the residents of Deltona are on the hook for any shortfall in the pension. So it is important that we have an understanding of what our liability could be. So that's why we brought an actuarial in to do that evaluation. They did a 15-year look, and they used 6.5% rate of return. Now, 6.5, just to put it in perspective, using their own words, has a 50-50 chance of happening. Remember that. 6.5 has a 50-50 chance of happening when you're doing this type of thing. And they're showing a $14 million deficit. As I said before, we know that the pension deficit, based on these analyses, anywhere from 8.1 to 14 million, and using the actuarial new standard, that deficit would likely be around 10.5 million. So we know we have a 7-figure deficit in the pension fund. This is important because, as I said just a minute ago, the City Commission and the residents of Deltona are responsible for any shortfall in the pension. So we'll move on from that. The percentage of coverage, that's that one column that marked in red. Percentage of coverage is typically, you want a coverage in a pension fund of anywhere from 80 to 90%. The coverage is based on several factors. The percentage of employees that stay through the vesting period. Why is this important? If you got 50% of the people don't stay 10-year vesting, that money went into the pension fund for that employee, but it's never going to be used by that employee, so it tends to prop up the pension. The second factor is the percentage of employees that stay to full retirement. Once again, if somebody stays for 30 years, they're going to take the full value of the pension with them. as opposed to somebody that say 15 years, they would only take half the value of the pension. In the city of Deltona, and this is a good thing, I'm not complaining here when I say this, our firefighters tend to stay past vesting and tend to stay to full retirement. Because of that, we tend to want to be on the higher side of that 80 to 90% coverage. And so we are recommending as part of our process that we use 87.5. That's halfway between 85 and 90. And we believe that 87.5 is a good percentage of coverage to be using. So the next one is the deficit coverage time. The factors that affect coverage time is the age of the fire personnel and the percentage of fire personnel in drop. Very simply, what this means is if you were to cash flow the pension, let's say that 60% of our firefighters are within 5 years of retirement and another 10% are in drop. What that tells me is we're going to have a lot of money going out of the pension fund before 10 years. And we tend to have a fire department that is toward the latter part of their careers, and we have several people that are in drop. So for that reason, we believe that an appropriate level of coverage is 10 years. Certainly, we would like to do more of an analysis of cash flowing, but it requires certain, and short of having an interview with every employee saying, when do you plan to retire and that type of thing, you'll never get a cash flow right. But we believe that 10 years is an appropriate level for this analysis. And then here's that ugly word again, rate of return. The rate of return, when you do this analysis, the same rate of return that they're expecting to get on their fund, when you pay it in advance, you're presumably avoiding that same rate of return in terms of additional costs. So, as I said before, 66.5% has a 50-50 chance of occurring. A 5% rate of return has a 90% chance of happening. So to be on the conservative side, and you will notice when you look at the charts that's in your package, that the difference between paying off at 6.5% and 5% is about, I think, $30,000 a year. So the analysis of going with a more 90% chance of happening versus 50 is $30,000 a year. So we recommend that we use a 5% rate of return. So the recommendations are based on the foregoing information. Staff would recommend paying $640,498.69 annually toward the pension deficit for a period of 10 years. Staff would also recommend that such payment be tied to an agreement with the pension board. To that end, staff recommends a joint meeting between the commission and the pension board to further discuss the City of Deltona Fire Pension Fund. I would recommend that this meeting occur when Foster & Foster update their deficit projection, which will be early in the fall, because they'll be using those new standards that they have come up with. Next is the fun one, the sheriff contract. Last Wednesday, I had a meeting with, yes, he's here, Mr. Ma, yep. He brought some rather disturbing news. The county, during their presentation on Tuesday of last week, talking about going to a rollback rate. And then I get the phone call, I had on my calendar a meeting, but I got a phone call prior to that meeting from the city manager in DeBerry. And Mr. Rosamonda and I had a very difficult conversation. He had already heard some things. He hadn't, I think he had a meeting prior, but he was warning me before I went into my meeting what to expect, that he was very concerned. And I said, well, based on what you're telling me, I'm beyond concerned. We had the meeting Wednesday right after lunch, and then he had another meeting with the Sheriff's Department 3 o'clock that afternoon. He and I then had a phone call late that afternoon, early evening, to strategize with how we should proceed. And so I told him at that time that I was planning to have a workshop tonight. I wanted to discuss it with you all. I have subsequently had a phone call with the sheriff. I had invited him to come tonight, but unfortunately he had a family matter to attend to. But I reviewed with him what I was going to talk about tonight, and he was fully in support. So with that said, this county commissioned a study by Canopy Management Consulting Group about the Sheriff's Department budget. That study by Canopy is part of your agenda package. I think it's 32 pages long. Potentially, the city could be asked to pay an additional $3 million plus annually beginning in the 23-24 fiscal year. Put in perspective, our current contract is about $12.5 million. So you're talking about close to a 25% increase in our budget. Put in even more context, 3.5, 1 mil is $3.5 million. So this is very close to being an entire mill. And in fact, if you add the pension deficit and the contract, we are looking at slightly more than a mill impact on the city's overall budget. So when we go later, I'm going to ask Mary Lyson to come up and go over the 5-year projected budget. You will see that at the current millage rate, is 7.85. The city would be in a deficit situation by the 5th year. So just to put in perspective, one of the areas of concern with this discussion is, okay, the sheriff is now a constitutional officer, not a charter officer as previous. So the question is, how much control does the county have over the sheriff's request? Because the sheriff's contract is between himself and the city. The county is not part of that contract. There is a provision in the Florida law where the county can go to the governor's cabinet to contest a constitutional officer's budget. The report that you have, that 32-page report, to me, my personal opinion, has all the hallmarks of the beginning of the process to appeal to the governor's cabinet for relief from portions of the Sheriff's Department budget. So that is a concern in that regard. The city manager from DeBerry and Deltona agree that we need to meet with both the county manager and the sheriff to explore the options that may be available to all parties. The resulting agreement would need to be approved by DeBerry, Deltona, Oak Hill, Pearson, Volusia County, and the sheriff. And the said agreement could result in financial stability for all parties. So we just need to have some certainty going forward. Right now, we are in total uncertainty. And that makes our budget process extremely difficult. Until the agreement between the affected city, the county, and the sheriff can be reached, the city of Deltona should budget in anticipation of an additional $3 million per year starting in fiscal year 23-24. That is my recommendation. Last item on the agenda is a trim review and discussion. On July 18th, the Deltona City Commission voted 4-2 to set the maximum millage rate of 7.5499. Under Florida statute, the city commission must have 5 votes, supermajority of all members, not who was here, but of the entire commission, to go above rollback of roughly 6.98 or 6.89. Unless the city commission can achieve 5 affirmative votes in September, the city must go to rollback. As such, staff must begin to prepare a second budget utilizing the rollback rate if we are unable to get 5 votes on anything above rollback. So this is a critical thing. Technically, we don't have to have those 5 votes now, according to the state revenue department. We have to have it by September. But the reality is staff has to be prepared for one way or the other. The county had prepared a rollback budget. They apparently knew they could not get 5 votes, so they have already prepared a rollback budget. But based on the votes last week, unless we get an additional vote to go to 5 positive votes, then we are forced to go to a rollback rate. And that will be something that we will have to have deep discussions about and probably a couple workshops to prepare for if we don't get 5 votes by next Monday. Since the meeting on July 18th, we have been informed the state of Florida that we now have an adjusted rollback rate that is actually 7.23 mil, not 6.98 or 89 that it was before. With a supermajority vote, that's 5 votes, the city can go to 110% of rollback, which is roughly 7.95 mils. Given the new information regarding pension, sheriff contracts, and rollback, staff has prepared a 5-year projection at 7.85, which is the current millage. Even at this much higher rate, we will still be looking at a potential deficit of $1.537 million at the end of the 5th year. Does the commission want to reconsider the maximum millage rate before the trim deadline of August 3rd, currently 7.4955, based on less than a supermajority? If so, what rate? Staff is recommending 7.85. If there's consensus for the acting city manager to enter into discussion with the county and the sheriff regarding future contract costs. And then lastly, that the commission wish to have a joint meeting with the fire pension board. With that, I would like to ask Mary Lyson to come up and review the 5-year budget that's in your package for 7.85. Because it also has some adjustments in the budget based since the last line item review. Some of it includes items you all requested, but there's also some other things that have come to light.
Last meeting that we had, the line by line. I'd like to draw your attention to the 7.85 millage. And also at the bottom of the page, these are the changes that have since occurred. Some of them from the line by line, some are just new information that we've learned. Under the commission, there was a recommendation to remove $50,000 from the homeless shelter in DeLand. Also, $2,500 for commission photos. It was a recommendation to add a city manager research fee, which was $75,000, and also consulting services for parks and the fire assessment fee. There were positions that were unfrozen in the clerk's office and adding 1 accounting tech 2 and a retirement payoff in the finance department. We currently have a part-time risk management manager in the HR department for a temporary position. The firefighter pension recommendation that John has made to add about $602,000 to pay on the unfunded liability. It added to the Parks and Rec our 5 summer interns, part-time positions for $80,000, and removal of the recreation software, $50,000. 2 part-time positions in the center are facility technicians, which would add $34,000, adding preventative maintenance to the appliances at the center for $2,000, and general advertising was added, and that was based on the last budget meeting that we had. We had recalculated the allocation for the workers' comp, which added $40,000 to the general fund, but it also reduced it in other funds. So that was not a change in the estimate, it's just a reallocation of the budgeted funds. New information that just came to us this July from the Florida Retirement System. It was an increase in the percentage that the city is required to contribute. And the second part of that is we went to a $15 minimum wage. So between those 2 factors, that increased our contribution to the FRS. And fuel, we reevaluated the fuel costs and oil costs based on the price that they are going up right now. If you review the change in the body of it, we added the estimated increase for the law enforcement fee. So beginning in the year 2023-24, we added $3 million. And then in the subsequent 3 years, it was a percentage increase. We really don't know what that is. It's just a calculated estimation. So all these changes. Also, we have not heard what our health insurance costs are going to be this year. We're still waiting for that. We budgeted, I think, a 10% increase, so it may be a little higher, a little bit less. That's an unknown. And also, we're changing the legal fee allocation, not the budgeted cost, but just how it's allocated between the different departments. So in total, it has a effect on the fund balance, and we just need to be careful and cognizant of the increased costs as we go forward trying to choose a millage rate that's going to work for the city. Is there any questions that you have on this?
Madam Mayor,
Do I have yours? Do I have yours?
if I can jump in
Probably
here.
do. I don't know.
We are planning to have another workshop in August to go over the budget in more detail. I just wanted you all to have this information tonight so that you can understand when we put all this into the 5-year budget at 7.85, the key here is at the end of the 5th year, we actually have over $1.5 million deficit in the 5th year that we would have to make up over time. So even at 7.85, with this information, assuming that the $3 million is the worst case scenario, we would be in deficit situation in 5 years.
Okay, questions? I'm sorry, we're in the middle of switching this. So I have Commissioner Bradford's, but she has a speaker list. So Commissioner McCool, and then it's under me, but I think it's you, Commissioner Bradford, right? You clicked in to speak, right? Yeah, we'll switch back. Okay.
You got it now?
Yeah, no, I know. We switched them. Yeah.
Yeah, we can switch back. Sorry about that.
We were waiting on them to fix it.
Commissioner McCool, carry on.
Thank you. I'm just going to start at the top here. And I want to preface my questions by reminding that if we go into our City of Deltona 2022 preliminary tax roll, the 55% of our taxable value is exempted in our community. 55% of our property is exempted, of the taxable value is exempted in our city. Okay, take that. So only 45% we're getting full taxed value So I encourage us to think about that when we're looking at this also. I wanted to ask a question regarding the city shortfall at 87% is the 644.98, right?
You're talking about the pension,
The
correct?
pension, yeah.
Can you ask that again, please?
That, I just wanted, the annual payment, okay, is $640,000, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you calculated, Mary, did you calculate also the shortfall because of the county rollback, right? That's going to fall on us with the sheriffs. What is that annual? It's $3.2 million, we think? Yes? For the sheriff's department?
Well,
Beginning in the 23-24 year,
Yep,
what we were budgeting for was the pension
yep,
drawdown
Yep.
and 3 million, slightly more than 3 million for the sheriff's department.
okay. So that's 3.26, 3.8 million dollars.
3.7.
$3.7 million overall. $3.7 million on 55% only of, or 45% of taxable value. Okay, so,
Ms. McCool, if I can put it in another perspective,
sure,
3.5 million is 1 mil.
yep. I heard you, I feel you. I wanted to, I need to go back and I want to find out, because it's going to be brought up, I'm pretty sure, capital improvement, right, is going to be brought up. We're going to have to rehash all of this, right? And I want to talk about how we got here, because we need to understand historically why we are right here, right now. Because all of this is tied in, capital improvement, the pension, well, we have no control over a sheriff, that was voted on, right? But from my understanding and sitting down with staff and understanding about this is that because it's going to be asked, why can't we go to rollback? Why don't we take it out of these projects? That we have projects that have been kicked down the road so long that we are now in critical mass, right, of trying to get these projects done. So I need to understand that, first of all. I need to understand how much of capital improvement we can touch off the bat.
well, let me just, can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah.
When you think about the general fund balance and the millage rate and the revenue, you really need to just consider operating expenses. The capital should come out of fund balance, because we can't pay, you pay for reoccurring costs with reoccurring income. Capital projects are one time. So when you're budgeting, you try to balance the budget based on your current revenues, current expenditures, and whatever you save goes to fund balance. Capital projects should be paid out of fund balance. It's kind of like the difference between your checking account and your savings account.
Yep.
So we should really focus. I understand capital projects are important and they're a big drain on the city's funds. But for this discussion, it's hard enough to wrap our arms around all these expenses. It's just best to try to focus
Okay.
on.
Ms. McCool, I would also add, I'm going to use a simple one that everybody understands, and that's road paving. If you defer road paving, the road deteriorates more over time.
Yep.
What right now would be 1.25 inches of asphalt on the road. If you delay it 5 years, you start getting potholes, you start getting base failure. Now you're tearing the entire road up, rebuilding the base, and then paving, which may be 3, 4, 5 times as expensive as a simple resurfacing. You know, the common joke around here is that when people call in about potholes in their roads, it's probably a county road. We do an outstanding job of maintaining our roads in the city of Deltona. We're very proud of it. It would be a sad day that we would defer capital projects because, as Mary just said, when we took a look internally at what it would take to go to rollback, and mind you, this discussion was pre-discussion on pension and the sheriff's department. In that pre-discussion, we were literally looking at about 37 to 47 positions in the city because you have to reduce recurring costs. The biggest recurring cost in the city is personnel. So, rollback will have a dramatic impact on the staffing level at the city. Things such as, reducing our level of service for mowing to where we only mow half as often. If we mow something once a week, we will start mowing it once every 2 weeks. Things of that nature is the things you got to do to reduce your recurring costs in order to go to rollback.
And I understand that, and what I'm trying to do is see the whole picture, right? In the terms of this having to be a whole picture. What is, Mary or John, what is the total cost? What is that liability that we're going to incur with the county going to rollback? I'm talking in terms of the services and the slack that we need to pick up from the county. Tell me what the implication is as our city government, how that affects us.
Okay, I'm going to try to put it in simple terms. If you had gone to the current rate at the county, your revenue would be here.
Yep.
You go to rollback, the revenue comes down to here comparatively.
Yep.
Well, with Save Our Homes, your revenue is only allowed to grow about 3% a year at most. So if both of those lines are moving at 3%, guess what? That gap continued.
Yep.
You never can make that back up. Once you go to rollback, that revenue you've lost forever.
You cannot recover that accumulation there. You drop off, you lose it forever. There's no way to make it up. I get that. What is that liability for us? Do we have that, did we talk about the number,
No,
that liability? Okay, so for next workshop or whatever, I'd like to understand, right, what that picture is, okay? In terms of road services, whatever we have to pick up, okay? I would like to understand that. My next question, the percentage of drop, right, what percentage from, what is the projection, or do we have the projection from years 5 to 10 right now of what percentage of our firefighters are in drop? Does anyone know?
I think there's about five firefighters in drop, and I think there are fewer than that in FRS. I have that number, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner?
Yep, one last thing. All of these, can you tell me on all of these, the pension fund, like being at 100% solvent, I want to know in these numbers, what percentage of cost of living did we go? Federal standard, state standard, what did we go cost of living on these projections here?
Are you talking about raises for the city or for the fire department?
Yeah.
Well, for the citywide, for the city, I think we budgeted 3%, and the firefighters' contract is under negotiation.
Is there a state and federal difference there? How is that factored with them? Cost of living?
I don't remember what the state was. I think the other municipalities, I see a lot of them come through just on a listserv, and there's quite a different variance. I think, what's the county's going to 4%, their raise? The county has a 4% raise for their employees.
Okay. And one last question. You said as far as retiring, 5-10-year projection, retiring, do we have that? 5-10 years retiring? Yeah.
I'm not sure how many are retiring, no.
Okay, I want to understand that, okay, in our picture, so if you can get that from me, that would be great. I think that's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Bradford?
Okay, I asked for this in the last meeting we had. When I look at our ad valorem revenues, I look at 21-22, I see 24,923 actuals. I look at 22-23, I see 29,230. I look at 23-24, I see 29,230. I look at 24-25, I see 29,230. I look at 25-26, I see 29,230. And I look at 26-27, I see 29,230.
Right.
So if we're doing projected, and all these other numbers are changing, why wouldn't we change that? Because what you're saying is basically the revenues aren't going to change over the next 5 years?
I think they will, but
Sure they will.
we tend to budget conservatively, and revenues are more uncertain than expenditures, typically how they raise, especially in the current environment that we have with the uncertainty in the housing market. So you're absolutely right that this is probably a very conservative projection.
This is an unlikely conservative projection.
No.
Because
Hang on.
we need at least, when is the last time, other than when we had the shortfall, well, you're giving us scare tactics here. You've been pushing for 7.85 for the get, and now we've got, I get the sheriff went up, we can't control that, we get the pension, but we're also not showing even a very small increase in this at all,
Commissioner Bradford, if I can, when we were doing the 3-day workshop on the budget and the line item budget, this particular item came up for discussion about the fact that the revenue was flat. What I pointed out at that time is that everybody is saying that we're going into a recession. We're already seeing the housing market in the country coming down. We're now starting to hear from certain developers that they're having to reduce their housing prices to sell them even here. So the concern that we have was, if we go into a recession, and let's say, for instance, there is a 6% drop in housing value, that would result in a 6% reduction in revenue. And because we can only grow at 3%, it would take another 2 to 3 years to make that 6% back up. So and then the next year you go over it. The net effect is you basically have flat revenue for that 4 to 5 years. So that's why we chose to do that, because we wanted to be conservative with the talk of potential downturn in the housing market and the economy. We have every reason to believe that at best we're conservative by keeping the revenue flat.
And just to, piggyback on that, the expenditures we only went up 3% right now, and what's inflation trending at, 7%? So yes, these are all projections. Are they pessimistic? Probably. I like to think they're conservative.
Okay. Now, we've had a 55% tax roll that's been exempt. Based on Deltona has had a major sell-off of properties this year. What is our new number of homes percentage that's tax roll exempt? Because obviously, a lot of these homes, once they sell, they start back over, right? So what's that new percentage at this point? This 55, it cannot be 55 again.
That's from 2022, from the property appraiser. That's new data.
The 55% is from
Yes,
what
for
was last
2022.
year's?
I don't have it in front of me, but it's very similar.
Is that because they're a year behind? So next year, will that change based on the?
January 1st is when the property appraiser
Right, so.
values everything.
So when we get the next one, it'll probably be lower, because we've had probably the most property flips and sells in Deltona. I'm sure, I'd love to have that data on the number of properties sold in Deltona over the last year. And with that said, that alone is going to be an increase. Like you're saying, property values have gone up, and I get what you're saying, but they have drastically gone up. Cutbacks, let's talk cutbacks. So since we're not going to do the fire assessment fee, we can remove the consulting fee for that, correct? Because that died from lack of,
We need to revisit that because you all passed a resolution that we were going to pursue the fire assessment fee. We did not have a motion at the last meeting, so you either need to rescind your previous resolution that we were going to do it, or reconsider, well, actually no reconsidering because there was no vote taken. So I had planned to bring it back for the commission to either rescind the resolution or to approve the consulting contract to go forward.
okay, so this is where I'm confused, because it was very clear when I brought it up, because I was concerned that that was a resolution, and you made it very clear that that was not an actual resolution, but that was just to allow us to do a analysis on it. And then when we voted on it last week,
You voted on a budget resolution.
so now we need to vote down the resolution that wasn't a resolution.
No, you voted to approve the fire assessment fee by resolution. So if you intend to reverse that, you have to have another resolution to do.
I'm aware, and I'm not on you, but what I'm saying is I brought this up when this resolution came up. And I was told, oh, it's only a resolution so we can evaluate this. This isn't an actual resolution. This is, and I believe Vice Mayor even amended that to state that. So now you're telling me it was an actual resolution.
We will double
that
check it. It was my understanding that you all approved a resolution to move forward with the fire fee.
The resolution was to have a workshop and evaluate it, is what we were told up here. We were told that we were doing a resolution to evaluate this resolution, to evaluate if we even wanted it.
You were doing a resolution because the ultimate resolution, if we stayed on schedule, was going to be done in January or February of next year. But the first resolution was to start the process to get to the point where we had a fire fee number, and that resolution would be approved, like I said, in January or February of '23. But the resolution you all have was to start the process.
And that was my concern, Mr. Peters. I voiced it that night, that was an actual resolution. I totally was concerned. We had never had a workshop. We had never discussed it. I'm actually finding out our legal department didn't even review that.
They actually did because they produced it.
Okay. So I guess we need to decide that, because if we're not going to have it, then obviously that can be removed. So we added a few positions back in here that weren't added in from our prior budget meeting. So when you say added, we added the accounting technician, the part-time risk manager, the pension payment, summer interns. Were these in, and I'm trying to remember from when we went over we had the workshop, the 6-hour, 8-hour workshop? Those were added since then, Mary?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I noticed you're unfreezing the record clerk position. What's city manager research fees? That's for the search for the manager, correct?
Correct.
I guess I'm curious what changed on these positions now than from 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago when we had our meeting. Because a lot of these positions were put on hold and not needed, and we were waiting on the consulting firm before we went forward. So did we get the information back from the consulting firm?
No, ma'am. As I said before, Madam Commissioner, our desire tonight was not to go into a budget review of these items. These were strictly for the purpose of explaining to you some of the changes that have been made in the 5-year projection. As I said a few minutes ago, our intention is to come back to the commission in a workshop toward the end of August to go over these items in greater detail. The budget is a working document. We already know some things that may have to change, such as the health insurance and those items. So it would be more appropriate for us to get into the line item discussion when we come back for a budget workshop. This information was illustrative in nature to explain how we got to the numbers we have in the 5-year projection.
That's all.
No more, no more. Any other, let's see, Commissioner Sosa?
Yeah, I have a question. I know we have the head of accounting from the sheriff's office here, so I have some concerns about the $3 million increase that we're looking at seeing in the next 2 years. That's, about a 25% increase. My question is, what is the current VCSO budget, and what is the 2023-24 budget that you're looking at?
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good morning, good evening, commissioners. Very good question about the sheriff's budget. Current budget is operating budget about 101 million. The requested 22-23 budget is 107 million.
Okay.
A 5.85% increase.
Okay.
Before we get to the details of the rate increase, I think it would be helpful to provide a little more background about how this study came about. With the Constitutional Sheriff's Office establishment, we had an opportunity to ask the question, is the current practice of coming up with a city contract amount, is that still relevant? Is that still a good reflection of the reality? So we talked to the county agreed to commission a study. And the consulting firm looked at various options. Their basic approach is to take the sheriff's operating budget of 101 million. In the FY23 version, I think it's going to be less confusing just to talk about FY23 version. So to take the sheriff's operating budget of 107 million, divide that into basically 7 chunks. The general fund, the MSD fund, the 4 contract cities, and then the city International Airport, DBIA, Daytona Beach International Airport. So they took an approach, they say a major chunk of the sheriff's operations is actually county-wide. It's not specific to any cities or particular city contract. So they took that as a general fund base, and there is a base for the MSD and the 4 contract cities. In this particular scenario, for the city of Deltona, that base number is $8.9 million, 8.7, not quite 8.8. So starting with that number, they looked at different scenarios to add different components to it, like administration, sheriff's administration, the general overhead of running an organization, information technology, fleet, training, and then investigations. A particular portion of the investigation, not the undercover investigation, not the narcotics team, is that portion that can be allocated to a city contract in the typical cost accounting perspective. So they looked at that, and they came up with 6 different options. I don't know, if Mary, if they all have the 6 different options, okay? And of course, the lowest cost option, option 6, that would give the county the biggest revenue challenge. That would mean a contract amount reduction to the city of Deltona. And the highest option would require quite a bit of increase. That's going to be slightly higher if the highest option was chosen. As part of the Volusia County 23 budget request process, the sheriff discussed with the county finance staff and the county manager about which option would be more compatible in today's environment, given everybody's revenue picture. It's challenging to everybody. There's always more service demand than the financial resources we are given. So the sheriff tentatively agreed with the county to pick option 3. That's the part I briefed all the city staff on. With option 3, just for the FY23 budget we're looking at, if we implement FY23 at this point, based on the consultant's recommendation, City of Deltona contract would have been 15 million, a little over 15 million, 50.3. I think you have that option there. But the sheriff has already agreed with all the contract cities for FY23, there's no increase. So he has held the contract for the City of Deltona at the same level for 3 years in a row. So for FY23, we don't really have a budget increase concern at hand. As soon as the consultants deliver their findings, the sheriff dispatched me to all 4 cities to brief you, to talk to the staff about what to do for future year's budget. So what we're talking about is what to do starting with next budget development cycle. So we have about a year, close to a year, to figure out what would be the best approach to get to the consultant's recommended option. Can anybody absorb this kind of increase in one single year? Doesn't look like it. So we need to take the time and come up with a meaningful solution so we can continue with this healthy community partnership. And for one thing, I need to make it clear so we don't get confused about service level. When I visited with all the city staff, the first thing they asked was, is the sheriff going to change the service level depending on the contract discussion? The answer is no. The sheriff will continue to provide the high-level services in law enforcement all of our citizens have become used to. So no service level change regardless of the contract negotiation, of the revenue discussion. This is simply just the revenue side of the discussion. I don't know if that answered your questions, but that's a little background for us to start talking about it.
Right. It gets to some. So now I keep hearing that the whole reason this study came about was because the county went to Rollback last week. Is that true, or is that a false statement?
We ask about the study because we have the opportunity to update the contract approach. If I remember correctly, when I talked to some of the staff, the formula was developed right around the time City of Deltona became incorporated. That's some time ago. So it is time to update so it would be fair to all the partners within this community. That's the primary reason.
Okay, so it's not because the county went to Rollback.
The study was commissioned way before
that.
The current budget even started.
Okay. Now, what exactly is the county cutting from you or the sheriff's office that you're passing the buck on to the 5 cities that use your service?
The county did not cut the sheriff's budget.
They didn't cut the sheriff's expenditure budget. And by Florida statute, the sheriff will submit a certified budget. That expenditure budget is not cut. The discussion is with county staff about the contract amount so the county can budget their revenues in future years accordingly. It's the same reason we all need some certainty about budget planning.
the county also needs some certainty about what kind of revenue to count on in future years.
Okay, so right now, this agreement would have come up regardless if the county had gone to rollback or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And the county did not cut any funding from the sheriff's office?
That's correct.
Okay, so basically what this is, just to make sure everybody's clear, because I've heard a lot of different things, this is just renegotiations between the sheriff's office and the 7 municipalities that it services.
For fiscal year 23-24.
Okay, so as a resident, you know, I pay city tax, I pay county tax, I pay several other taxes in there. Now, my question is, as a resident of Deltona, and I'm paying county tax, shouldn't the county tax cover some of your expenses that you're looking to, you know, throw back at the city by increasing its, you know, contract by $3 million?
Of course, this is one of the things we emphasized with the consulting firm, and we gave them a list of the sheriff's operations in the format of cost centers. In the information we supplied to them, I don't know if you printed out the backup for that budget page. What's labeled as countywide is actually countywide services, and those kind of countywide services are not allocated to the contract cities. So there's a close to $46 million worth of the sheriff's countywide services are funded directly and by default in the general fund. Therefore, they are not allocated to any of the recipients for this study. What's allocated is the investigations portion that the consulting firm believes that should be allocated to different kind of service recipients.
Okay. So if I'm looking at the paperwork I was given, basically what the sheriff's office is doing is now charging each of the municipalities that takes its service, and you're charging us for additional administrative fees, and you're charging us for training. Is that correct, under Method 3, which you had stated was the preference?
Correct. In Method 3, based on FY23 budgeted amounts, the starting point would be $8.7 million. That's the cost center for the City of Deltona contract, all 83 staff members and their operating cost, plus $1.3 million of administrative allocation to the City of Deltona contract, plus the $1 million in information technology allocation, plus $546,000 from training, and about $1.3 million in fleet, and $2.3 million in investigation activities. So you reach a total of $15.3 million new contract amount. And that's a very good question you asked. Approach-wise, this is similar to the current contract. If you would look back, probably a year or 2 years back, attached to the city contract is a detailed worksheet. Part of that worksheet has the total number of hours due to the staffing level, and there is that hourly rate. The old hourly rate has the equivalence of the direct cost and some overhead allocation. So in the accounting world, if you deal with grants and cost allocation charges, it's generally acceptable to add different layers of indirect cost to arrive at the total contract amount. So approach-wise, this is not fundamentally different from past practice. Consulting firms simply updated the data and the call volume and everything.
Commissioner Sosa, the main concern here is, and I posted the sheriff for quite a while on Saturday. I will just say for the public, the commissioners, that the sheriff had been wonderful to work with. He emphasized the fact that as a constitutional officer, his contract with the city of Deltona is strictly between him and the city of Deltona. The county is not a part of it. And what's occurring here that distresses me, and I believe it distresses the city manager in DeBerry, I'm not going to speak for him, but based on our conversation, I think he feels likewise, is the county is making a unilateral decision that's going to impact a contract that we have with the sheriff. The county has not talked to us about this. This is a unilateral decision on their part that has an implication on our part. And that's part of the reason we want to go and have a meeting with the county and the sheriff to dump $3 million on it like that isn't fair. You know, if there was a ramping up or something of that nature, it may be more palatable, but at least have a conversation with us because it's impacting our contract. It's impacting our citizens. And like you said, we all pay county taxes and we all pay city taxes. The sheriff, when I was talking to him, I said, don't you all do a lot of free things for other cities? He said, yeah. We don't get paid for them. It comes out of the county share. So, you know, that needs to be part of the overall discussion. You know, when the city of Daytona Beach had all these events, and the sheriff sent 35 personnel over there for the event, is he being fairly compensated for that? Things of that nature, because the feeling I get is we're being asked to pay 100% of the freight of what we get from the sheriff, but there's other cities that are getting a benefit and not having to pay for it. And so in a roundabout way, that county part that we're paying is subsidizing these other cities at our expense. And that's why I want to make sure that we're getting a fair share. That's why I want to have the meeting with the county and the sheriff. I can assure you that the sheriff is looking out for our best interests. He wants to do this in a fair and pragmatic way. I have given a suggestion of what I think would be fair. He believes it's more than fair to all parties. So hopefully that's something that we can negotiate. But at this moment in time, I can't tell you what's going to happen.
Well, that's my main question is, what is the county taking away from VSO that is passing along that cost to us?
What the county is doing is they're reducing their share of what they're paying BSO. And that cost has to be absorbed by somebody else. That's the other four municipalities, Deltona, DeBerry, Oak Hill, and Pearson, are having to pick up that additional cost that the county's not going to carry anymore.
Okay, so when we go to the budget, we're saying that the county said we're going to slash $10 million from the sheriff's office, but we were just told the county gave the sheriff's office everything it asked for. Is that not, I mean, did I misunderstand that? I mean, you said the sheriff's office asked for $107 million, and the county gave you $107 million. So basically what we're looking at is we're just looking at contract negotiations to get a higher price out of the cities.
That's correct. The sheriff's certified budget is $107 million. That budget hasn't been adjusted.
Right.
So this is a pure revenue side of the discussion with the county.
So what are they
But
doing
hang on,
next
hang on
year
a second.
that's-
Hang on. That is the current budget year.
And that's my next question.
The
What are they
study
doing the
says
following
that
year
going
that's
forward-
causing this?
The study says going forward, we would absorb more of the costs.
So my question is, did the county tell you that they're going to cut your budget?
No.
Okay, so basically you're still getting the same amount, and now you're looking to get additional revenue from the cities as part of the study.
That's what the county has recommended that we do.
But the county's not cutting your funding at all. You're just looking for additional revenues.
The county and the sheriff agreed upon one method. That method would require additional revenue. And that revenue is not directly tied to the sheriff's operating budget. The sheriff, by state law, certifies a budget, and that's focused on the expenditure side to provide services. This revenue discussion is for the county to receive a revenue level where they believe is fair and reasonable. That's why we need to take the time to start talking about how to get there.
Okay.
But hang on, if you go to this chart, the option 3 is showing that our costs would be 15 point something million as opposed to 12 point something million. So the distribution of the costs will be higher on those 4 cities than they currently are. Yes, the total revenue is the same. It's how the money is distributed according to people with contract with the county. And it's on that chart that we provided.
Okay, when I'm looking at this, and I look at the chart for methods 3 and 4, just looking at 3 and 4, the fund, the general fund, I'm going to assume that's the county, that hasn't moved, it hasn't wavered. But the other price tags have gone up.
Correct. The general fund you're looking at for method 3, and both for method 3 and 4, the base cost center level is both 71.7 million. Of that amount, the general fund is 46 million. MSD fund is 11 million. And then you have the 4 city contract plus the international airport portion. And that's the base starting point. And then you add 36 million or so to get to the $107 million budget.
Okay, so let me ask you, how much did the county fund this fiscal year?
This fiscal year is 101 million.
They funded 101 million.
Correct. Fiscal year 21-22,
right.
ending on September 30th of 22.
And for 22-23, how much are they going to fund?
107 million. That's
Okay.
exactly the number you're looking at with both method 3 and 4.
So they funded the whole 107 million.
On the expenditure side, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Socha, if you go to the next page in your package, under group option 3, there are numbers outside of the chart itself. That is the discount that is occurring this year. And that's where the 2.9 million came from. And that is, they're discounting it this year. We do not know what's going to happen next year and beyond. That is the reason for the concern. All the discussion that you're looking at is for the current year. The county and the sheriff for the new 22-23 budget year are going to ensure that we stay there because the sheriff already had a contract in place on June 1st before the discussions occurred. So there's a discount that's occurring this year. It is the 23, 24, 24, 25 that we don't know. Because we're not guaranteed of any discounts going forward. The discount, according to the sheriff, is because we already had a contract with him that predated the discussion. So everybody had to honor what the current contract says. There are no guarantees for the future. And with these numbers on the right-hand side of this chart, that is why we are saying next year the sheriff is going to have to give increases to his dispatch. He's going to have to meet the $15 an hour requirement, and he's got some pension issues to deal with. So that's where the number 3.1 million came from. But this side of that chart is where the concern is because the 22-23 budget year is being discounted by all those numbers out to the right. So the discussion about this year is immaterial. The real discussion is what happens after the coming year beyond, and that's where our concern is.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So to sum it all up, what we're doing is we're answering these questions you have in the back, right? Sort of like, does the commission want to reconsider the maximum millage and stuff like that? 1, 2, 3, and question number 4? Is that what we're doing? Here today?
What I would like to do is have consensus for the staff to bring back on the August 1st agenda a reconsideration and the vote on the maximum millage on August 1st. We have to turn that trim notice in by August 3rd, so we have time to make that adjustment. So yes, that's one of the asks for tonight is that we have consensus to bring this back up for reconsideration on August 1st.
All these 4 questions is what you're referring to, am I correct? So I know that the Sheriff's Department had a representative here to speak. Do we have a representative from the pension board here to speak as well, or is that something that's part of this question, number 4? Does the commission wish to have a joint meeting with the fire pension board? Is that where that discussion is going to happen and the representative is going to meet with us?
At that time, we would have the representative from the pension board come and have a joint meeting to discuss the entire pension shortfall issue.
Okay. So are we going to have a consensus for the 4 questions, or are we going to break it down?
Yes, we still have a couple people, Commissioner McCool and Commissioner Bradford
okay.
are back on the thing, and then I know that some gentlemen from the firefighters pension board and the union filled out a request to speak. Am I right, Liz? Yes. So then we can, if we have questions on that, since they're here, we need to go ahead and address the questions if they can answer any of the questions we have. Okay? Commissioner McCool and then Commissioner Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hey, I wanted to ask about this, if we're doing the meeting or whatever, because data wasn't provided, but it's talking about the allocation, right, and the delineation of services, okay? Is that somewhere that I can find that, what those are? Because, it's like Deltona is using the bulk of the services, it appears, and I just want to understand, that's what this would have us say, right? We're picking up our cost here, and that's what their methodology was. But is that data available to quantify this? Is that data available for us to quantify that in terms of the administrative costs and stuff like that?
Yes, most of the allocation, like administration, information technology, training, and they are based on the FTE count. So it's a percentage of your FTE as a percentage of the overall total FTE. For fleet, it's based on the vehicles assigned to your contract. And for investigations portion, it's driven by the county-wide call volume. And we supplied the call volume information to the consultants, so they use the call volume information for that distribution. I believe it's included in the detailed worksheet. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bradford?
Just want to clarify, are we missing a page here? Because I go from method 2B minus 2A, but yet I don't have method 2A and 2B. We go method 3, 4, and then the amount. So I don't know if there's a sheet missing.
Well, the county decided to go with method 3, correct? That's why you have that. The rest of the methods are all in here. They're in the
So
study.
my question is, what are we doing with the $2.14 million being refunded from the sheriff's office this year? Or, you know,
We will, due to the fact of this deficit that being taken care of, the sheriff informed me that we will not be getting any type of rebate or anything back this year. He is planning to absorb a lot of the costs himself. He's had vacancies that went unfilled for a period of time, so he has money in the budget that he can absorb a significant part of this cost for the coming year, but he will not be in a position to do that going forward.
okay, so, but it shows a deficit, but we're not getting the deficit back, is what you're saying? Because
That
like I
is
know
my
last year he gave
understanding.
us,
That is my understanding from Sheriff Chitwood.
okay, because last year I believe we got a refund back. So this year, we don't get it. So we really didn't get the next year at the same price because we just put $2 million towards the next year. So I don't know how we can say it's the same cost. We just lost $2 million of services that they said we rode back. They had mentioned that we could choose the service level and not absorb this all at one time. I was a little confused on that. So when he did his presentation, he said that we can kind of choose which method we go with so that we're not getting hit with the $3 million at one time. Can you explain that in layman terms?
One of the key things in negotiation is not to let the other side know in advance what you're going to be proposing. I have spoken to the city manager of DeBerry, and I have spoken to the sheriff as to what I think would be a fair way of handling this. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but without going into specifics. But all three of us believe that it would be a fair way to handle this so that the city can absorb the impact over time as opposed to all at once. And so that's the discussion we'll be having with the county. We need some clarity. We need some understanding going forward so that we can prepare for it. Unfortunately, I believe those discussions are going to take some time, and so we just have to be prepared for the worst.
Yeah, because, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just me, the way I see it, we're getting double taxed. Because we pay our county taxes, but then we're going to have them turn around and hit us upside the head again.
Preach.
So this is pretty much
For real.
double taxation, and I don't understand how it can even be legit.
Now you appreciate my frustration.
Just say it like I see it. And I would love to hear from the pension board, since they respected us enough to show up, and I appreciate you inviting them, John, so I'd love to hear from them. I know.
Are you good, Commissioner Bradford? We will go there as soon as everyone is off the board. Commissioner McCool?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to find out here, the meetings that we had, meetings conducted with the Volusia County and then VCSO finance staff and then the Sheriff's Office captains, and then back in April, the City of DeLand, DeBerry, Oak Hill, and Pearson. But I'm not seeing where the City of Deltona met. Is there a reason we didn't meet?
No, ma'am. I can't give you one.
Were we invited to meet? Do you know?
Not that I recall.
Okay, so I'm just putting that out there, that in the Canopy's own management consulting study group, that Deltona wasn't, was Deltona invited?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
For the public record, we had a conference call with the Canopy Consulting folks in the same format we did with all the other 4 contract cities. So we supplied some information, and during that meeting, we discussed that the general desire to really use method 6, because that's only the direct cost approach. And that's where they collected the information and included method 6 as part of the study, as part of the recommendation.
I'm just saying that the information is not recorded here if we met. It's not recorded. I'm just bringing that up. So I don't know if it was remiss in failing to meet, but I'm letting you know that it's missing out of here, and that's the only reason I was asking here is in meetings and documents that all the other cities were on here, but not Deltona. So if we could find out, that would be fantastic. Thank you. And I'm of the same belief of Honorable Commissioner Souza and Honorable Commissioner Bradford, that it just, feels like we're paying twice. And I understand the relativity of different things that they do and what's spread across the board. I mean, I do that in my own business, but here it just feels accidentally punitive, Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. There's no one else on the board. So let's just start on paying twice. So we have a contract with the Sheriff's Department for law enforcement services. Other cities have their own police department that they pay for law enforcement services. All those other cities pay into the general fund of Volusia County. The general fund for Volusia County, is that what you're talking about, where you say we double pay? Because we pay a county tax? Mm-hmm. So to be clear, I don't know if you have any of the information on what percentage of the general fund is law enforcement for the unincorporated county and just the straight law enforcement that everybody gets as part of Volusia County. I don't know what percentage of the general fund that is. But understand that the general fund also, out of the general fund comes the beaches. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. Comes the beaches, comes the court, comes the jail, comes the animal control, comes all those other services that everybody in Volusia County benefits from. So when you're paying your county taxes, you're not only paying law enforcement, you're paying all those other services, and that millage rate is 5.38 for the general fund. So that is what you pay out of your county taxes, every single property in Volusia County, unless you're not homesteaded, unless you're exempt and so on and so forth, pays into the county's general fund. So maybe at some point from the county, we need to understand what percentage of that 5.38 mils actually goes to countywide law enforcement. I'd like that percentage at some point.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have that information.
And what is that, sir?
The county last Tuesday had a presentation to the county council. They had a very nice PowerPoint presentation. They have a pie chart. According to the Office of the Sheriff makes up 10.6% of the total county expenditure of $1.6 billion. And public protection makes up another 18.2%. So when you add those two together, it's almost 20% of the total county budget is the sheriff and or public protection.
Minus the city contracts.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the other portion, the other 80% of the general fund goes to other services, correct?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that in your pie chart as well? Is that in the pie chart as well, what those other services are? Because they should be the jail, the beach, animal services, and all those other things across the board.
Madam Mayor, if you indulge me a second.
Have it.
Public Works is 24.3%. Public Protection is 18.2%. The Ocean Center is 2.7%. Growth Management is 1.7%. Finance is 1.7%. Leadership is 0.4%. The justice system is 1%. Community services is 13.8%. Clerk of the court is 0.3%. Business services is 2.6%. Aviation and economic resources, 6.2%. Sunrail, 0%. The Sheriff's Department, 10.6%. Property appraiser, 1.2%. Supervisor of election, 0.5%. Tax collection, 1.3%. Non-operating debt, 11.4%. And tourist development is 1.8%.
So those are all the things in the county's general fund. Doesn't include the other two millage rates that people that live in Volusia County pay that are in unincorporated parts of Volusia County, which is their MSD at 2.10 mils and their fire service fee at 3.84 mils. So those are the other two. If you live in unincorporated Volusia County, you pay 3 millage rates equivalent, and the fire district and the MSD equates to someone's city taxes, basically, city set taxes. So that's the first thing I'd like to clarify. And the second thing that I wanted to ask is concerning, Mary, on your budget presentation. You have, I want to just be clear on this, when we added in fire operations, additional firefighter pension payment of $602,000, that's what the recommendation is prior to meeting with the pension board, et cetera. And then on the bottom, you have citywide, recalculate the workman's comp allocation and update the retirement contributions. That's for FRS, correct? Correct? So when you're looking at those last three numbers and the increased fuel and oil costs for $60,000, the $751,000, is that an increase over this past year, or is that the total for all of those three? And what is the percentage of the increase on all three of those items, if that's not the total? So the total of 751,000, I can't read my writing, 100 or 600, is, that's the total? That's not the increase? That's the increase. Okay, so that's what I want to be clear of. That is the 751,000.
Not the workers' comp, that's just a reallocation to the general fund.
Okay, when you have those, that's why I want to be clear on this. When you have these three numbers under citywide, right? Am I on the right tab? Recalculate the workman's comp allocation. That's an additional $40,200. To the general
fund. So it's going to be allocated to other funds.
Okay, but is it an increase? Or just an allocation?
It's adding to our projection that we had earlier.
Okay.
So is it an increase over last year? I can't put that on the top of my head, but I can find out.
Okay, and then they updated the retirement contributions, that's for FRS, the $650,100. Is the $650,000, that 100% of that is an increase? So we're paying $650,000 more into the FRS, the state's FRS fund. Okay, and then the increased fuel and oil costs, the $60,800, that's in addition to what we're already paying? That's an increase. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that, because those are the increases of what we already have, and then we would be adding the $602,000 to pay down the pension. That's a separate item, not applying to the bottom updated retirement for FRS. The other question I have is, let me see here. Okay. Sorry, I have all my little notes over here. Regarding the firefighters' pension fund, I have questions, but I don't know that right now is the place to ask them and to get into the weeds about it. I would like whoever filled out from that's here to talk about that to come up And if we have any questions or if they have any comments on anything that questions that were asked in the past, I'd like to address that now. We still have 25 minutes. I'd like to address that. And then I would like to move forward with, starting with question number 4, because they are here. Does the commission wish to have a joint meeting with the Fire Pension Board? I think we need to address that question first and then move on to the others, because you guys all took the time to come here, and we want to hear from you, and then we want to address that last question first. So who would like to come up and speak, Liz? Whoever wants to come up. If you filled out one, just let her know so we don't double call or something.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do the pension board, but I do want to tell you the FRS increase. Everybody's okay with it, but that's your staff. We're not FRS.
No, that's why I'm clarifying that. Right.
So I got, do I got 4 minutes? I don't need 2 minutes, whatever it is. I got a lot, because right now I'm kind of really confused. You got open negotiations with the Sheriff's Department. He's having private meetings with them. We don't get any of that. We get a offer of a 2% raise, 1% going to us, the other percent going back to the city to pay more onto our pension, with a 9.1% inflation rate. I mean, I'm like astonished from what I hear. Do you guys not know that they hired a private company to come in and tell you about the pension? You didn't hear from Foster & Foster, third-party independent. You didn't hear from the attorneys. You didn't even have your city-appointed board member at any of these meetings that they put together with a paid third party to come in and tell you all about our pension and the doom and gloom. Did anybody even know that? Because I had to tell the guy, you're elected. You guys have a pension board member. Never even came. You didn't even ask him a question. I had to tell him there was a meeting. He didn't even know. It's like astonishing to me to stand here. The cops, look around. 12 years I've been here. The growth is out of control. Of course they're going to be killing themselves. So are we. I heard, overtime's out. We got $3.2 million. The city paid itself back for wages for the firefighters. Did they deduct that from the overtime or the pay? No, it's doom and gloom. I mean, it's insane. I'm sitting here listening to this smoke and mirrors that's blowing my mind. I've been doing this 12 years. I've asked everybody to talk to me. I don't even hear from anybody. All you're hearing is this, like, it just astonishes me that nobody is asking questions. How do you have meetings with people that are paid to come in and tell you something, but neglect to bring in anybody that's the third-party independent that has that can't bend, their arms can't be twisted?
Thank you, sir. It's insane.
Yeah, so Kurt Vroman, I'm with the Deltona Firefighters. I'm also the chairman of the pension board. And I'm sorry I got here a little late, but at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't know if you guys will answer this or not, but my guys in the back said that prior to me getting here, the city manager said that we only made the 7.6% a few times prior, the 7.6% return a few times in the past. I'm just trying to understand what your guys' definition of a few is, because mine's like 3. And in the past 10 years, we only haven't hit it twice. You know what they do to paramedics that miscalculate drug dosages? They terminate them. They take their paramedic license. They take their livelihood. I don't know if he did this intentionally, but we fired many people for very similar things in the fire service. You guys need to really pull it together and figure out if ethics, integrity, and all those things are what you're looking for. Because it's a public record on the March 31st report from ENCO showing the past 10 years, we have succeeded 7.6% 8 of those years. And I'm not saying by a little bit. So go look at that. We got him on record in a public meeting before that, saying, and I quote, 7.6% has only happened once in the last 20 years. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't speak of it. Otherwise, what you're trying to do is misinform 7 elected people, misinform everybody who's watching this on TV, and make us all look bad. And if you guys think I'm upset, no, this is passion, because I sit on that board and I try to do everything
Thank you, sir.
to keep your guys' costs reasonable. And we've had past city managers and past budget finance directors come speak to us to help rein in those costs, and we've worked to help out, and we'll still work to help out. So if you guys want any more information, feel free to contact me.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and Ella Bryan, please.
A lot of information tonight, a lot of information tonight. But you said there was 18.2% and 10.6. That comes to 28.8%, not 20%. That's one thing. Now let's think about this for just a minute here, because you brought up the millage rate. He wants to go to $15 million. In Deltona, that's 4.285 of your mill that the sheriff's going to eat up. Because if I remember right, you said that the millage, 1 mil, is 3.5. So he's eating half of our millage rate. Now, let me see here. I did hear that they were going to give a raise. Oh, that's a mandatory raise, isn't it? Because the state dictates that you have to go to $15 to the people on 911 and some of the others. But I didn't hear a raise for any sheriff. Matter of fact, I haven't heard a raise for a sheriff in, what, 4 years, I think? Or is it 3? Last raise was like 2-point-something%. But now let me think about this for just a minute, because it was also said that we're paying twice. Well, now think about this. We're paying twice because we choose to have better service here. We choose to ask these gentlemen to come out to our city and check the speed limits, you know, to investigate our drug use that we have going on in our city, so forth, so on. And they do an outstanding job. But let me think about this for just a second, because he said we're paying administrative fees. Well, haven't we been paying administrative fees all this time? So where's the whitewash?
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Bradford, and then we're going to see if we can answer a couple questions here.
You know, I think Mr. Varner brought up a good point. When we discussed the sheriff's office, we didn't have a time limit on them speaking. So I'm not quite sure why we would not allow our pension board to come up here and explain
And they should.
and answer questions to us. And I don't even, I'm also wondering why they weren't voluntarily invited like we had other people. When we have items discussed with our pension, our fire department pension, I would like, for future reference, I would like to make sure that we have a representative invited, because this is not the first time that they've showed up and they said, hey, I'm only allowed 3 minutes, 4 minutes to speak, whether it's a workshop or a meeting, and it's not fair, especially when we invite other people to discuss on their topics. So if we're going to do it for one, we need to do it for all. So, you know, I just want to throw that out there, because this is not the first time this has happened. And I do apologize, because it's nothing against you guys. You guys have done an absolute beyond amazing job. And I really do thank you. So I don't know if they have more to say, and I don't know if anybody else wishes, but I don't think we should be cutting them off to explain to us what's going on, because I did find this interesting, you know, especially when we're being told 8 out of 10 years they've hit the 7.6%. So if this means we need to host another meeting, workshop, so be it, then we need to do what we need to do. But from future reference, I want to make sure they're invited if they're being discussed.
And I agree with you, Commissioner, and that's going to be the next question is, one of your items that you wanted to have discussed is a joint meeting with the pension board, and we need consensus
Question
to
4.
schedule that meeting.
Question 4 up there, it's gone, but yeah, question 4.
Yeah. Does the commission wish to have a joint meeting with the fire pension board? I, for one, yes. Let's get this consensus first, sir. Commissioner King? Commissioner McCool?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Ramos? Vice Mayor? Yes? Yes. So you have consensus to schedule a meeting with the fire pension board and make sure that everyone that's involved in this is there. Because there are a lot of questions and a lot of data that we need to look at to be sure we have the correct information to make any decisions on taking $600,000 out of our general fund and starting to pay down the pension. I mean, the pension is a long-term process. As long as we have employees paying into it, and as long as we have employees, that pension fund is going to be there. So we need to, before we start paying down, we need to know what the ramifications are there, good and not so good. It has to be clear. So that is why, if we have this joint meeting, it has to encompass all those things. Yes, sir. I should say when we have the joint meeting.
Thank you for allowing me to come back up. I want to be clear, when I spoke earlier, I did not speak on behalf of the pension board. Much like you, Madam Mayor, I'm just the chairman. There's 5 of us. But what I can say, because it is on public record, you should be getting probably a letter here soon from our board requesting a meeting with you guys based upon the workshop you guys had back in March, where numbers are twisted and things like that wasn't really taken lightly by most of the trustees of the board. So we wanted to request it. So I know I'm not speaking out of place. You can go back to our last regular board meeting, and that was discussed, and look in those minutes. So that's not going to be a problem. Outside of that, when I spoke as the Deltona firefighters, because I'm not going to speak on anything that we haven't agreed to as the pension board in my capacity as a chairman. So, but I can gladly sit and meet with you guys one-on-one. I've been the longest trustee on the pension board. I think since its inception, I'll have to go back and look, but definitely the longest currently sitting on the pension board. So I have a lot of knowledge when we had finance directors coming and saying, hey, can you change these numbers, because we can't afford in 08 and 09 to make the pension contribution. And we said, oh yes, we'll help you out so you can get your budget the way you want it. So yes, you guys are dealing with some of the consequences of past commissions. You know, they wanted to get their budget right, so, you know, maybe get reelected. I don't know what the reasoning was, but they asked us to do it, and we did it. And that's what we did for the finance director. We did it for a city manager came in front of the board. And all that stuff's public record, but I can just spout it off because I was sitting there when these things happened. So, you know, if you'd like to meet, we can talk about why some of the numbers are used the way they're used. We'll lower the assumed rate of return to 0 if you want us to. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure you guys want that bill from us. You know, your pension payment is similar to a credit card payment. If you pay the minimum balance, you're going to pay forever. If you pay a little extra, you might be paid off in 3 or 4 years, right? That's what they do on your credit card statement. So we can do whatever we want to do. We can have all these discussions on however you guys want to pay down what you guys feel you need to pay down. But we want to work, as far as me as one trustee, I want to work with you guys, and I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with where you're at, but also that the funding is there for those guys should they die in the line of duty, should they retire, should they get disabled, et cetera. So that's what I offer to you guys as one trustee, and then as the chairman, I can speak and say, because it did happen at the meeting. We wanted to have a joint meeting with you guys to discuss some of these numbers that were going out from that meeting. So. I'll answer anything else if you guys have questions. If I feel like I'm out of place, I'll tell you I feel like I'm out of place, because I'm not going to speak for the whole board. I'll only speak as a single trustee.
Commissioner McCool, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
for him?
I do.
Okay.
Well, in general.
Okay.
That I want to make sure that when we have this meeting, that we have side-by-side work product, okay? Because numbers, while they are not subjective, presentation is. And I just want you guys to work together, meaning staff and firefighters to work together, because, you know, part of the issue that we have is there has been, and you hit some of the nail right on the head, when we talk about past people wanting to get elected or people wanting their budget to look better or whatever, and we have a lot of crap that's been kicked down the road. And you know what? It's really not fair to neither the firefighters or this sitting commission right here, because we're cleaning up a lot of crap, right, that was wrong. And I think that saying that and trying to understand that, you know, the commission has a fiduciary responsibility, first of all, to its residents, right, to its firefighters, right, who, it's the majority, it's a big part of our public budget. And part of the rancor, if you will, is that a lot of chickens have come home to roost, right? And we need to understand how to do what's best for everybody. And both of us are put in the untenable position right now of having to do that. You know what I mean? Firefighters protecting their interests. The city wants to protect their interests while protecting the interests of the residents also, you know, and it's an unenviable job that we have right now, admittedly, because we are cleaning up from past, you know, lapses in budgeting, judgment, wanting to look good or whatever. So I just say that I want to see work product when we have this meeting side by side so that we're informed, so that it's not this antagonistic relationship, because really it guts me when I sit in here and have to face firefighters that put themselves in harm's way and trying to justify, oh, how do I pay for this? And then explain to my residents the same thing. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to be the bad guy here. Nobody's trying to be a bad guy. We're trying to really, with clarity and transparency, understand one another's position, and I think that's what it should be. So it is my request that when we have this meeting, we have side-by-side comparisons. I want to see RORs on this. You know what I mean? I want to see this information, because there is he said, she said, and it's just really hard to filter through that. While I don't have a background in accounting, I run a business, and I need to understand these. I contribute to my, my retirement, and I need to understand its effect not only on the firefighters, but on my public also. So I just don't want there to be this antagonistic thing where it feels like, oh my God, the commission's fighting with the firefighters because the media eats that stuff up, and I don't want that in my city. It's not healthy for our city, you know, to do it that way. So I really want transparency here and understanding. I want me to be able to understand this with the education that I have, and when we have that meeting, that's what I want to understand. I understand investments. I understand going down in the red. I don't want that for my city either, right? So when we talk about this, God, we're all on the same side, you know what I mean? Different wings, same bird, that kind of thing. So that's what I want to see, and I want to hear, and I want to talk. But as far as meeting alone, it's going to do no good, because you're speaking Greek to me unless I can see everything laid out. And that's what I want as a commissioner, to be able to answer honestly to my people, that I did the fiduciary responsible thing. You know what I mean? Protecting each side's interest.
If I can respond to her through the chair, I can't agree with you more, and I wish that we would have had the opportunity to have our actuary here the night of the March workshop, so you could get point counterpoint, because, you know, my dad always told me there's three sides to every story: his, hers, the truth, or his, the truth, whatever. There's always going to be something in the middle. But if we could have had our actuary come and say, oh wait, because your actuary he had a lot of good points, but some of the stuff, he was just running different numbers, and it like you said, the media, it doesn't look good when you start running other numbers. And, you know, I mean, we're very well funded. You know, there's an unfunded part of that, but that's going to take like a nuclear disaster for you guys to have to pay out every single penny that the pension fund owes. We're talking like worse than 9/11 event, where every firefighter in this city dies, and their wives die, and their beneficiaries die, because these pension funds, they go forever. We're looking at them very, 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 very long term. It's not tomorrow we're going to pay out this $8 million that's unfunded. Yes, your actuary said it, 70% of the funding of a pension fund comes from return on investment. So if you get that $8 million in there sooner, guess what? Your annual payment goes down. So that's where our actuary could have offered something that maybe your actuary was told not to or didn't think to say or whatever. So, you know, the point counterpoint is always, I think, a big thing that you guys should embrace when it comes to those things. And hopefully in the future, if you guys are going to bring somebody in that you guys hire, we can send ours from our pension board as well to respond.
That screen up there doesn't lie when you put side-by-side comparisons, and that's what I'm talking about, and it's point counterpoint, because I don't subscribe to unicorn tales nor fear porn tactics, you know, and I just really think that the public deserves, and here's the thing too, I have confidence in Mary, and I have confidence in our city manager. I have confidence in you guys that you're talking about. Again, numbers don't lie. Interpretation is subjective, and I think that that's what we need to differentiate. Madam Mayor, I'm done. Thank you guys very much, and I look forward to having the meeting.
I mean, I'll finish up with telling you.
Sure.
There are bad actors. I got 12 years of solid working with the city, doing things to better and reduce costs, and there are bad actors right now. It ain't anybody up there, but there are bad actors, and there's false information, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I made a commitment, and everybody knows it, there's a few people, not to black the eye of the city. Well, this continues, there's a lot, because it's ridiculous. And yeah, side-by-side comparisons, when was my emails to everybody up there months ago about the inconsistencies? And please get back to me. But now we're worried about side-by-side comparisons? Yeah, we should be. We should be. We shouldn't have a paid company coming in with and leaving out your city-appointed trustee that's on the pension board for years and years and years. I mean, I appreciate that. I want that. I have 12 years of a track record of that. The people I'm dealing with don't. So whatever you guys want to do, I'll still be the same guy. I'll be there. Just like I said, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're very welcome. And that's what we're trying to clarify and bring out. By having a joint meeting, everyone speaks, everyone brings their points forward, and we discuss the actuarial reports from those that are submitted, and we would like to have them there. So you have consensus to schedule this meeting. Please do not schedule another item on a workshop that night. Make this a one and only. Am I right, commissioners?
Yep.
This is a one-item workshop.
And can we also make it a noted fact that when there's a meeting, they need to have the city-appointed trustee invited to these events? I don't care what it is. We should not be leaving that out. To me, that's just trying to be slick. And if we're not trying to be slick, it gives the vision of being slick. So, you know, we may not be trying to do that, but we don't want that impression either, because I don't need these guys feeling like we don't appreciate them and what they do. So let's just try to make sure that we have that city-appointed trustee invited to these events and meetings.
Madam Mayor, if I can suggest this joint meeting, I would suggest we do it as a special meeting so there is no time limit. Workshops have a 2-hour time limit.
That's fine.
And just based on the conversation that occurred this evening, I can pretty well guarantee it will go well beyond 2 hours. So we will set this up as a special meeting.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll back up to item number 3. Is there consensus for the acting city manager to enter in discussions with the county and the sheriff regarding future contract cost? We need consensus to move forward or not to allow these discussions. Commissioner King? Commissioner McCool? Yes. Commissioner Ramos? Vice Mayor? Commissioner Bradford? Commissioner Sosa? And me, yes. Okay, you have consensus with that. So, question number 1, does the commission want to reconsider the maximum millage rate before the trim deadline of August 3rd? So currently, we approved 7.4955, if I'm correct in writing this down, based on less than a supermajority. And if so, what rate? So, commissioners, let me close my little thing. Number one, does the commission want to reconsider what we are putting forth in the trim notice? That is question number one. And if there is a desire to reconsider that, then we will go on to questioning what rate you want to look at. So let's have that discussion. I don't know if we want to go down the line. I hate to start with you again, Commissioner King. Do you want to have a comment on that, or shall I go to Commissioner Sosa and start at that end this time? Do you have a preference? Commissioner Sosa.
Well, at this time, with all the discussions, we're trying to factor in, should we add another $640,000 to the pension fund? We're factoring in, we need to look at a $3.1 million increase with the sheriff's office. And those are numbers I'm not comfortable with raising our millage rate because they're just speculation. I mean, with the sheriff's office, it's just contract negotiation is what I'm getting. And with the fireman's pension, I'd love to see the actual figures, both sides, and determine if we actually need to put $640,000 from our general fund into the pension fund. Should we put some? Yes, because we do have somewhere between an $8 million and a $16 million deficit. What that number is, we'll find out in the very near future, I'm sure.
So you don't want to revisit, yes or no?
We can revisit it, yes.
Okay, you want to revisit the millage rate?
Yes.
In other words, to put it on the agenda again next week?
It has to go on the agenda, yes.
Okay, Commissioner Bradford?
Nope.
You do not want to revisit. You want to keep it at 7.4955. Vice Mayor, revisit, yes or no? Revisit. Commissioner Ramos? Revisit. Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Revisit. Commissioner King? Okay, and I will say revisit. So you have the majority wanting to revisit. Now, Mr. Acting City Manager, to revisit this, do you want to present a millage rate, or do you want to present several scenarios next Monday? Because you're asking, the next question is, what rate do we want to revisit? And that's just like wide open fun.
Madam Mayor, you have in your package, I believe, 4 different millage rates. One of them is 7.25, which is within 200ths of a mil of it's the new rollback, and it now includes a 7.85. I think it's important to realize that even at the 7.85, at 5 years, it will be in a deficit situation. If we were able to negotiate something with the county that is more palatable, I think the best case scenario is it would go from $1.5 million deficit to at best $3 million fund balance. So there's no way to put it, but even at 7.85, we will be losing a significant amount of money each year, making up the money from the fund balance. And what I would propose is, I believe staff's recommendation, I'm pretty confident, going to be 7.85, but we will present multiple numbers like we did before, so that you can see what the 5-year impact is, and then you all can make a decision based on those 4 different options that are presented next week. We will have a recommendation as part of the package, but we will give you the numbers at several different tax rates.
Are we clear that, okay, we have so many factors, unknowns there. Are we clear, however, that we can have the presentation? I need to understand no sheriff's department, I mean, you know what I mean? I need to understand no sheriff's department increase, no firefighter pension. I need to understand those numbers also. You know what I mean? Without those factors.
A straight budget,
Yes,
a
exactly.
budget without adding those two,
Yeah.
those two large dollar amounts, I mean, there's going to be an increase for the sheriff's department.
Yep.
One way or the other. You have to factor in a portion of an increase. Am I right, sir?
If I can offer this, the previous spreadsheet that we gave you did not include the pension, did not include the sheriff's department, other than anticipated increases for inflation. But it does not include that list of items that Mary went over with you a few minutes ago. So we can update those previous spreadsheets and have that along with what we think is a worst-case scenario going forward.
The other two factors are so unknown at this juncture. I appreciate all of the information brought forward for us to think about, but it's such an unknown at this time that I understand the projection. I understand the need to project, but I don't want to make, you know what I mean, that decision based on that, right, that factor, those two factors only. So I would appreciate seeing, yes, thank you.
So looking at what we have here today, you have to include the $751,000 of increases. The FRS for general employees, the increased fuel costs, and the reallocation of workman's comp. That must be in the budget. We have to pay that. Am I correct? Okay, that has to be in there. Some type of an increase like that you had generally for the sheriff's department contract, and your increase in personnel that you have here, 5 summer interns, and your accounting technician. Now, the added retirement payout for $57,000, is that going to happen one way or the other? Okay, so that's a mandatory item that has to be included, correct? Correct. Because the commission can shave off the personnel, because those personnel were added in since last time, correct? Yes. Okay, so please clarify what you added on here, what we have to take into consideration. That is an increase that we have to take into consideration, which is the retirement payout and the last 3 items on there for sure.
Madam Mayor, what I would suggest that we will color code them. Those items in red are the things that we absolutely have to do. And items in green, there'll be things that you have an option on.
Please, it has to be clear.
So we are getting a line item.
Oh my God, and please leave the city clerk red. We need that person, we need that information stowed away. Don't touch that.
We may need it, but it's not a mandatory budget item.
Yeah.
It's not mandatory that we have to have that. These other items on here, we have to pay them one way or the other. So those will be clarified, exactly what's here, but it's going to be clarified in red and green, what are our options and what has to be paid.
Madam Mayor, FYI, point of order for time.
Time? Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
Commissioner Bradford?
No, I was just going to ask real quick, when we discussed the budget before we did the workers' comp allocation, so I'm a little confused. Are we putting this back into a citywide, or are we still divvying it up between the departments? Because I think when I brought it up, when we went over the budget, that the amounts were less compared to the last year, I was told it's because they weren't divvied up properly. So are we putting it all back in a pool? Are we still divvying it up, or were they miscalculated too low?
They weren't miscalculated, we're just calculating it and using more data to make it more accurate.
So this is the same number that was in the budget we seen before. Okay, that's what I thought. So this isn't a different number. This is the same number. It's just added together.
It's just adding a little more to the general fund and a little less to other departments.
Okay. But it was already in the budget. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, Commissioners? I see nobody on there, so we are good, sir. You have what you need. Everyone, thank you very much. We are adjourned.